He's appeared. There he is.
And there's Peter, all the way
Good
in
morning, Ron.
Australia. Good evening.
Yeah, it's the 7 o'clock in the evening for me now, and it's your just before 4 somewhere. Yeah.
It's 5:31 by the clock here on the computer, and the clock behind me, it's 5:31 there too. Sometimes they're not exactly in sync. They're sometimes slightly off. That one I think tends to run slow, and I have to every once in a while catch it up, or fast. I can't remember, but every once in a while I have to adjust the one on the wall behind me. I didn't get very much sleep. I know you didn't watch today's video that I did, and neither did I yet. I'm only 1 minute and 51 seconds into it.
I didn't. I watched yesterday's, which was interesting because that's what I was going to talk about, the banks and stuff. So you stole my thunder.
Well, no, I mean that's a subject that continues to need exploration by people. People need to be reminded that at the core of virtually all of the ills of the world can be traced to the financial system.
Yeah.
If we could stop the corruption at that level, many things that plague us would I think drastically change fairly quickly.
Yeah, they would, absolutely. And the very beginning of that is really another internal, and that's realizing that the value is in us. What's money a representation of? We're led to believe that the value exists outside of ourselves. So, money is the value, right? So now you've got to go to school, you've got to learn how to fit in a corporate box to go and chase after money and to determine what your value is when it's, of course, it's ass backwards, as we say, back asswards. It's all the other way around to what they tell us. First you've got to realize that the value is within yourself. Money is a representation of what? Well, it used to be a representation of our value as represented by gold or silver. Your old treasury notes that you used to have, which was, quote unquote real money when a money system was still relevant, was of course about how much value was behind the note. And the note was a promissory note of exchange. You could exchange a $10 bill for X amount of silver or gold. And of course, nowadays they've turned it around. And nowadays, when you grab a $10 note out of your pocket, what you're really looking at on that note is $10.80 worth of debt, because it's all debt. And so, not only have they made you believe that the value is outside of you, but they've also made you believe that have hidden the fact from you that they've turned the value from a metal-backed representation into a debt.
From an asset to a liability.
Yeah, it's a liability. So now your value is a liability, and they're the saviors. They're enabling us to do stuff by giving us loans. And if you or I did it, Ron, if I gave you a piece of paper and I wrote a bunch of numbers on it and I said, right, now you've got to slave for me the rest of your life to pay this back, it'd be called fraud, and we'd be thrown in the penitentiary, where some corporation, by the way, would actually get your bonds, what do you call it? Your jail bonds, and monetize it. Because they actually go on the markets. People's bail bonds get monetized on the money market. They're worse. I mean, in Australia, they have a saying that nobody gambles like an Australian. An Australian will gamble on two flies on a wall, but these financial characters, they gamble on everything. They securitize everything from your birth certificate through to every bond, every mortgage, every loan that you make.
Every time we sign our name, we are literally, what's the word that you use? We are being mined for our asset against our knowledge and against our will, without our knowledge and against our will.
Yeah.
Of course, the train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Of course, the real value, this is where I want to get back, as represented by gold and silver, was represented by gold and silver. Gold and silver wasn't the real value. The real value was, of course, gold and silver represented the value of your blood, sweat, and tears, of your physical labor, of your imagination, of your passion, of your love, and that's what the real value is. You are the real value. Your passion, your love, your insight, your knowledge, your creativity in creating business and creating goods, creating food. That's what gold and silver were a representation of. And of course, then gold and silver became the value, and of course, then gold and silver were dropped, and then there's this debt bubble. And every time that we go to a
All
bank,
fraud.
and yeah, it's all fraud. Absolutely, it's not. It's criminal fraud, and it's murderous fraud is what it is, because people get murdered for this debt, big time. And every time that people have gotten too close to the truth in the past, they've had a quick bullet or a quick war against their nation, or if you look at it, if you look at the history of war in the 20th century, just go and look through your history books, and it's not even hidden. Every war that was fought in the 20th century was fought by a country with central bank against a country without central bank. So that's why wars have been waged. And of course, I remember my parents telling me that in Holland at the end of World War II, they did a financial system reset, and every family was given a 10 guilders. They had guilders in those days. Now they have euros. They were given a 10 guilder note, and everybody for one day in the country was equally wealthy. And this was, of course, the criminal bankers who had set the Germans up against the Allies, and caused the war, basically because their financial system was collapsing again. They'd set all that up, and they were doing a reset. And I believe this is what we're going to see very, very soon, is that they are going to collapse the money system again. That possibly the war scenario is one that's not possible for them at this particular point in time. So that they're going to re-offer to recontract humanity, basically, and do another little fair reset. So there's going to be some sort of a debt jubilee, or whatever little trick they're going to put in front of people. And the system is going to collapse, because even public figures available. I mean, last year we were at, I believe, $650 trillion of derivatives, which are promissory notes, which are basically, pieces of paper that you've signed based on your loans and debts that are getting monetized out there. And there was $650 trillion worth of derivatives last year, about this time last year. And that's on top of a world GDP, gross domestic product, of what is it, 63.7 trillion thereabouts. So last year the world earned combined $63.7 trillion, and our debt level combined was up to $650 trillion. This year, that figure has approximately risen to $800 trillion, whereas the GDP has probably gone down. So tell me how this system is sustainable, because they're filling a big bag with hot air and they're pumping it up to max capacity, and they know darn well it's going to burst. And, that's why you've got Bernanke and the Fed printing $85 billion a month of more debt to people, because that's what it is. And all money, of course, is debt. It's a promise of debt. And when you go to a bank and you sign up for a car loan or a mortgage, you're signing a piece of paper, and that piece of paper, the way it works here in Australia, the bank sends the piece of paper to the RBA, which is our Fed, our national bank. And the national bank gets all these little debt notes and bundles and issues bonds on the international market. So you sign the piece of paper that creates national debt for you and for your country, and it also creates debt for you as well. So you then have actually created this money by creating debt for your country, and you also get to pay this money back to the banks. And who's the debt that the country owed to? Oh, guess what? The banks. So they're really giving us nothing. All they are giving us is a belief system, the belief that this is real, and the belief that this is the value, and that we have to chase after this value. And so the money system is at the root of it. You're absolutely right, because we're made to feel like we're worthless if we have no money. We're made to feel hollow and terrible and like failures, whereas our real assets, which are so often left unrecognized in society. Emotional intelligence is one of those things that is so underrated in this society. You're either an athlete in school or you're an intellectual, and you're praised both ways. But people who are emotionally intelligent, who are able to heal, who are able to build relationships, and make art, make us reflect upon ourselves, evoke feelings. These people are very, very often extremely intelligent, but not in an intellectual fashion. And they're extremely valuable. If you look at traditional cultures, the emotional intelligence is the most cherished thing, really. And so we're left to just chase after this dollar, try and find this value. And of course, sooner or later your ship comes in and you worked your whole life and you've made your millions. And then all of a sudden you're still left feeling hollow and sad because you really haven't lived your life at all. You've lived a second-hand life that's lived upon a promise of a lie, which is based upon a bunch of banknotes, which are just your own enslavement. So, you end up chasing your tail, and it's always a promise of tomorrow, and it's always a promise of tomorrow things will be better, and tomorrow we'll sort out this system. But it's never really based upon. It's never really set up to teach you that you're the value. And I believe that some people wanted to change this in history. If you look at JFK, he was about to start issuing treasury notes again based on silver,
Right. And Lincoln actually did issue greenbacks when he was president. And
oh, guess what?
Usually the people that try to create a more honest money system end up getting killed.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? It's really
Well, I
funny.
wonder if there's any connection.
Yeah, and JFK got shot, and JFK signed a treaty with Sukarno in Indonesia to start cooperating on setting up a new monetary system, basically. And of course, Sukarno, very shortly after JFK got shot, got deposed by Suharto. And of course the lies of history. I remember going to Indonesia, being a Dutch colony, and I remember going to primary school in Holland and being told that the horrible Sukarno had been deposed by the great Suharto. And don't worry if you have to remember the names, because you can remember the good guy, because Suharto has heart in it. He was the good guy, whereas he was the stooge of the cabal that deposed Sukarno. Whereas JFK was summarily dealt with by a bullet in the head, and
it was a miraculous bullet, though. I mean, it was fired from behind him and went around his head and came back and hit him in the thing and knocked his head back. I mean, I saw the video.
Yeah, and then of course the whole money system is it's based upon scarcity, of course, and a whole paradigm of scarcity and us believing in scarcity. Whereas if we know the value is within ourselves, then we know that we're abundant, because our love, our imagination, our knowledge, our wisdom, it knows no bounds when it's set free. And of course, plenty of people, since the days of Tesla, have invented free energy systems. They've been systematically hunted out and abducted and killed and persecuted. I am aware through friends of mine in Egypt at the moment of a scientist who's just managed to escape Serbia, who was being prosecuted, and he's a free energy inventor, and he's also invented a plasma energy machine to clean up the nuclear radiation leaks from Fukushima and what's the Russian thing, Chernobyl, and this guy was being persecuted, and thanks to the contribution of many people on the internet, they managed to smuggle him out and get him to safety. So anything that tells us that we're abundant, such as free energy systems, free communication systems, that really gets very, very heavily dealt with, because the moment that we realize that the earth is abundant and the universe is abundant, and that we within ourselves are abundant with ideas and energy and passion, is of course the moment we stop believing the lies. and it goes very, very deeply. I don't know if you're aware of the African Dream Project, which was a project that was started by Mohammed. His last name escapes me. I'm really good at Middle Eastern names, as are most of us.
Well,
Um,
half of them are Muhammad, so at least you get the first one right.
yeah, I got the 50% chance at the first name.
That's a joke.
Yep. Oh well, you get the comments for that one. Put your foot in it. Put your foot in it. But this guy was like a street kid in Cairo, and he worked himself up to be like a billionaire in the 70s. And he looked at Africa and he said, "Well, look, do we really want the West to develop Africa? Because the West has have suppressed good technologies, abundant technologies. They have suppressed holistic medicine. They have suppressed everything as good, and they've replaced it with a oil violence-based paradigm of scarcity and fear and suppression and fake money." So he set up the African Dream Project, and he started pouring all his money in it. And the first thing they designed was a road compactor or a soil compactor to build roads, and it cost about a tenth of the price of Western road equipment. And it
Caterpillar didn't
was
like that one.
yeah, it was an amazing machine, and it was yeah basically. And so they started to develop. Basically, like Heather's CVAX concept, they started to develop this self-liberating, self-abundance creating way of organizing society. And they started to work in Namibia in the 70s. They started to work with the Namibian government. And Namibia was a right royal mess in those days, you know, warlords, factions, murder. A country that really was sort of hanging together by a thread socially, financially, and otherwise. And they set up a few projects, and they did the most amazing things. They built infrastructure. They resurrected old mines. They started getting contracts from overseas and getting wealth. And all of a sudden, Mohammed, bang, he was gone. And he spent 7 years in a jail in Egypt. And he's been pretty much running for his life since. And the African Dream Project is now starting to regroup, and indeed some of the scientists that are being persecuted for their free energy inventions, etc., are starting to find refuge in Africa, where the African Dream is starting to get a resurgence. And they had technology, low-cost home building technology, where you know one crew can build 10 houses in a day or something like that, and it's all modular and they can just develop. They had pretty much permaculture type programs to start growing food with aquaponics, and it's honestly when you go through the documents and read all the plans, it's a total feasible, possible utopia, and it doesn't have to be based on money at all. You know, it just is. It's like your what are the Amish? You know, somebody needs a house, they all go over and they'll bring some wood and stuff, and they go and raise a barn, or they just look after each other. You know, and look at all the indigenous cultures. You know, which indigenous culture had money? Yeah, well, I can't think of one really. Maybe there was one, but they're probably the first to be deluded then. So, if you look at a world without money, it's very, very feasible, because as long as everybody keeps acting on their passion and imagining, being, and doing, then certainly we
And
can
willing to
very
help one another.
yeah, yeah, but that's the thing about scarcity, and I know from times there've been times in my life where I hit the skids, and I've always been a generous person to a fault. It's just the way I am. I'm not tooting my horn, but if I had 100 in my pocket and I had a bunch of friends, and I'd take them all out and I'd share with them. I just tend to naturally want to share what I've got. But I've had times where I've been poor, extremely poor, in my life, where, business venture has failed, or, gone through a bad relationship, bust up and felt a bit sorry for myself, and sort of let the job slide and all that sort of stuff. And I know when I got very low on my money, I started sort of being a little bit stingy and keeping my pennies to myself, and not really sharing the way I'd normally share if I was abundant or if I was flush. And of course, the scarcity paradigm that they have put us in by making us dependent on oil and pharmaceuticals and all these sort of things that are bad for us is, of course, turning us a little bit more negative in terms of wanting to share, and they just do that by creating this us and them, these nation against nation, and rich countries, poor countries, refugees is a huge thing here in Australia. Illegal migrants. People don't want to share with those bastards, but it's actually our wealth that's built up on the rape of their nations, and we owe them every cent we have, basically. That's the truth of it. So, but the moment you switch to abundance, by realizing that you're the value within yourself and finding the spiritual value together with your material value, and finding the economic abundance, the abundance of goods on this earth, the moment we start living abundance and living from the awareness of abundance is the moment that we so naturally start to share. Because that's what I do believe at the very core of humanity. People will share, and people will help each other, and you see that when there's great disasters, and it's a shame that wars and things like that have to bring it out in us. But abundance, if there is abundance all around, if you've got free energy and you're not, paying $200 for a family that has two cars and they have to run the kids around, they both have to work, and they're paying $200 a week in fuel nowadays, it's just silly. And $100 in electricity, just take that yoke off the people and see how their mind already would start to change, and see how that $300 would not just be spent on themselves, but be spent on their friends, their family, their community. And that's where it's at. We have to start believing in knowing, not believing. We've been believing, and that's been the problem. BS, belief systems. But we have to start understanding that we're the value, that we create the value, and that these bankers are the tapeworm in the system. Because I believe at some stage in the old paradigm was the old era, was an old paradigm, and money worked quite fine for a while. But it wasn't until we got this central bank tapeworm in the system, and that's been sucking up 90%, because when you add up all the taxes, excises, levies, all these sort of things, that we're being charged. So basically, pretty much 90% of our labour gets sucked up by this tapeworm in the system. These central bankers, these banksters. So basically, if we are all in abundance, really, what we all we have to do basically is do 10% of the work. 10% of the work that we're doing now, and we're still making the same value available to ourselves and our community. And of course, 10% of your 40-hour week, if everybody had 30 more hours in their week to just, do what I do, sit in the park and watch the ducks and look at the clear blue sky when we have one, because the bloody chemtrails are really. But if everybody had 30 more hours to spend with their children, what would relationship between father and mother and child be like compared to what it is now? I'll dump you at daycare or school in the morning. I'll pick you up, and in the evening, and when I get home, I'm so tired and so stressed from all my bills and my mortgages, and I'll just snarl at you, and I'll just sit you in front of the television, which is the tell lies to your vision, which makes you more like what I am now. Let's take all that away. Let's give people, even if it's 10 hours more a week, how does that relationship between that parent and that child change? How much closer do they get? How much more into the heart space do they get? And that's what abundance is all about, because the universe is that big, beautiful, loving, beating heart that's full of abundance and full of energy and full of love. And when we get into that heart space, when we're allowed to get into that heart space, because we're enjoying the abundance of our being, then society will transform very, very quickly. And it's just a matter of stop believing in the lies that the tell lie vision tells you, and that the bankers tell you, and actually start standing up to these thugs, because that's what they are. They're thugs, and they're the worst thugs. They're the same people that own the pharmaceutical companies. They're the same people that own the media, and they're the same people that send our fathers and children out to war to be slaughtered in the name of what? In the name of separation and fear, and And that's what it's all about. So when you said before that the money is fundamental, it is fundamental in so many ways, but the only way it can change and not be reset, because here lies the danger again. If we all say, well, the money system is what is the problem, okay, well, let's go knock the bankers over. That's easy. Everybody tomorrow says, stuff it. I'm not paying another bill. I'm not paying another mortgage. I'm not paying another loan. Just let them go to hell. And let's all make a run on the banks and all go and get our money out at the same time and see how long the banking system lasts. It won't last at the end of the day if we did all that. But if we do that and bring them down, then, it's like with any revolution, you've just created a power vacuum. And if we don't understand truly that it begins with us by understanding who we are spiritually and that the value lies within us, if we don't understand that before we bring the banking system down, then we're just going to end up with an equivalent of it. It's just going to phoenix itself. It's going to rise out of the ashes, and we might have a bit of a reset there for a while and think that everything is okay. But then the slavery system will kick in again, because the tapeworm will worm itself into the system one way or another. And off we go. Which revolutions in the past in history that we know have brought forth, free, truly free and abundant countries? None, because, there was still a sort of reset and a continuation of the same system or a similar system with a slight modification. Instead of a monarch, you had a president. But the tapeworm always comes in when we just look at the external and just work with the external. And as much as we need to look at the banks, we need to look at our inner value. We need to find our inner true value, which is peace, prosperity, abundance, and that's what we are. We are the value.
Very good. Yeah, you're right on track of some of the things that I've been talking about the last while here. And including opening up our latent gifts, because we're all more powerful, as I mentioned today and a couple of days ago. We're all more powerful than we think we are. And as you said, when we recognize that we are the value, we're much more enriched than we think we are, rather than impoverished.
Yeah, empowered rather than impoverished, and all our latent capabilities will come back when we see the earth as abundant. And this is agriculture. I was watching a video before. Jeff Lawton, which is one of the pioneers of permaculture, walking 45-minute walkthrough of his farm in northern New South Wales, which is the most natural, abundant. It's got food forest, and a food forest is a place that just grows food perpetually by itself without anybody having to work at it, because it's like a rainforest. Has the cycles of death and biodiversity. Beautiful food forests keep. Once you set up a food forest and mimic a natural forest, it just goes round in cycles and it produces food forever, and there's nothing after. You just have to walk through and pick it. And
now, is that a YouTube video?
Yeah, just look for
If
Jeff.
you'll send me the link to that, I'll put that link in the blurb for this.
Yeah, definitely. And so he set up this system of aquaponics and permaculture, and it's just absolute abundance. And so they have us believing that we need to eat all this GM food and this stuff that's sprayed because the earth is not abundant enough to bring food for everybody. And of course, our food and water being poisoned, we're being poisoned, and that's one of the major factors too that stops us from realizing that with that value. And so reconnecting with all that sort of, reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with our food source, becoming involved in growing food in some way, shape or form. And you can even do it on a little balcony on a flat. You can have a vertical garden that's quite abundant, all these sort of things are there to help us to get back in touch with ourselves. And permaculture and earthships, what a combination that will be, to live without money, free and abundant, with free energy. The Africans invented a type of Wi-Fi internet type signal that can carry, I think, 10 times more signal than any current Wi-Fi technology can. And it's reversed. It's actually, instead of being harmful to nature, which our cell phones signals are killing the bees and the Wi-Fi is killing the bees, theirs is actually not harmful to nature at all. Neither was Tesla's electricity. And so, you could be sitting in your earthship that needs no external power, that needs no external water, in the middle of your of your green permaculture forest. Australia is big enough to house the whole world's population and give every family a 10-acre block. And you can, with permaculture, you can regreen the desert without very much technology at all. So, and if you give the whole world every family on the whole world a 10-acre block on Australia, you're still left with the state of Queensland, which is probably second largest state, I think. So, you could have that for extra. And that's how much abundance is on this planet. And that's
And
how
there's no
much.
such thing as overpopulation, which is another lie they sell us. But we're
No.
really to the end of our time
We are.
approximately. So,
We
but
gone
that's
over, haven't we?
fascinating. I mean, I need to learn more about this permaculture thing, which is why I asked you to provide that link, because that's something that I want to watch later on today. I have a pretty busy morning lined up, but I should have some free time, hopefully to get some sleep too this afternoon.
Yeah. And he's done one on urban permaculture. So it's Jeff Lawton with a GOFFLAWTON. People can Google him. Urban permaculture is just brilliant. How you can just from a little backyard get so much abundance. But that's probably for another talk.
Yes.
I know we're heading pretty long. I've lost count of the time as I do when I waffle on.
It's over a half an hour, and I do try to get it in that time range.
Yeah, no worries. So we'll leave it at that for now. But yeah,
I
people
always
think about the
appreciate it, Peter. And there are many things that we could talk about, and then one of these days I actually want to create a conversation with you, because I have some questions I want to ask you, not on the record, but personally, about some other things that I think you might be able to contribute some ideas to me. And so I hope to set something like that up within the next week before we do our next conversation online.
Not a
As I said,
problem.
I do have some questions I want to ask you. Anyway, I thank you once again, and appreciate your willingness to share with people. People enjoy this and enjoy Aristo, and I'm going to
They certainly do, and
continue to do that.
all strength to people in Greece by Aristo's last video. That was horrendous what was being described there. So, all strength to you and all solidarity, and thank you, Ron. Namaste.